Good evening and welcome to the Leader's Edge. This is Season 3, Episode 3. I have the pleasure of being your host tonight. I'm Nelson D. One of my favorite sayings came from the late Zig Ziglar. You don't build a business, you build people, and then the people build the business. This is all the more true for building leaders. But how can you do just that with this current constraint of social distancing and virtual learning? To help us tonight with the answers is a special guest. His name is Juan Roy, or June to his friends. He is the HROD consultant for the Manila branch of the Nomura Research Institute, a global think tank based in Tokyo, Japan. He just finished an amazing term as program chair of the Philippine Society of Training and Development, or PSTD for short. He is the incoming president of the same organization, a position well deserved given his over 25 years of experience in HR, OD, business strategy, leadership, QMS, agile, risk management, corporate transformation, personal effectiveness, and much, much more. He is the devoted husband to Mary Grace and loving father to three wonderful kids. So, ladies and gentlemen, join us to welcome to the virtual stage Mr. Jun Roy. Jun Roy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nelson, for that very generous introduction. It's so kind of you to introduce me that way. And good evening to all our audience tonight. It's a pleasure to be here and sharing to you insights that can help you lead your organizations in this new normal. So our topic for tonight, as Nelson said, is about the leadership development in the new normal. How can you enhance your leadership development programs when today it's not the way it used to be? So the question now is, given this scenario, is our current leadership development programs, the way we develop leaders, is still relevant? Or does it need some reboot or rebuild? Let's find out as I share to you some insights tonight. First, the fundamental goals of leadership development. Has it changed? Is the goal of leadership development different today than it was before the pandemic? I say, based on research, that they are actually the same. The fundamental goals of leadership development remains to be about driving performance and preparing for the future of the organization and of that individual. The only difference is that we are talking about a very different kind of future. And so it makes us think whether the kind of programs that we are giving our leaders today is the same kind of program that would make them really prepare for the future and drive the performance of the company towards that future. First, let's look at what are the typical programs that we do. So you can see here whether your current leadership development programs are aligned with what I call the usual. Usual because these are the current ways of doing things, even prior to the pandemic, even 10 years ago. You might probably heard about the 70-20-10, 70% being devoted to experiential, and no one can debate with that because that has been long established with the concept and theory of experiential learning. 20% on the social, that means your mentoring, your coaching, and 10% is devoted on the formal. So for example, in the 70%, many organizations devote so much on on-the-job training. And the others, they go through what is called an action learning, wherein they give their leaders a problem to work on, and through that problem, they learn in the process. On the coaching, there is virtual coaching right now, there is the mentoring program, and other organizations spend money and resources on what we call the 360 degrees assessment or feedback, wherein they get feedback not only from their subordinates, but also from their superiors, peers. In other organizations, they even include customers, mind you. And of course, 10% is devoted to the formal training. Now, the only difference now is the formal training has changed dramatically because we're now talking about the new normal. So a lot of virtual sessions is being done, and organizations are struggling also to transition from the classroom mode to the virtual mode. But I would say still that these are useful in the sense that even during or before the pandemic, these are already expected on how leaders are supposed to be developed. And so the question after this is, are there more opportunities to enhance these learning and development methodologies that would develop our leaders who will carry forward the organizations towards their future? So the question now is, are these enough? What other modalities of learning can we still infuse in our leadership development program that would help our leaders to prepare their organizations, drive the performance of their organization towards a better future?
Thank you, June. June, I like the presentation already, and we're just starting. I just wonder
Thank
whether,
you.
I just wonder whether there are any fundamental similarities, that there are principles that always be the same, whether it's a pre-pandemic program or a post-pandemic program.
That's a good question, Nelson. Actually, that's what I'm saying all along. They're the same. The fundamental principles of adult learning, the principles of e-learning that has expanded your typical adult learning, they have been there prior to the pandemic. I guess the main difference before is that the adult learning of the face-to-face classroom training has been expanded by some other adult learning principles when you do e-learning. But as you can see, e-learning has been there even prior to the pandemic. So yeah, the answer to that is yes, they're practically the same.
Can you share a couple of those principles for us?
Example, in e-learning, we have what we call chunking. Chunking is a term that I haven't used when I was starting training in the 1990s, even in the year 2000, 2005, 2010. But when we went into e-learning, all of a sudden chunking, which translates into bite-sized learning or micro-learning, becomes an important principle. Because nobody would like to watch a video that is like 30 minutes. So you make a bite-sized learning, chunk them into 5 minutes. So that's a new principle for e-learning that is not there when we were having the classroom face-to-face learning. Now in face-to-face, the whole learning remains to be the same. Even today, even when you do e-learning, you provide an overview, put the details there, and then at the end you summarize, because learning is about repetition, big picture details, and then again, big picture. It hasn't changed. So that's an example of an adult learning and the practical application of that.
That's great, because I'm so used to what I call pre-pandemic programs. So now I'm thinking of life as pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. I just love the notion that these principles are the same, but I think what you mean is that implementation will be the one that's different now. Am I correct? Did I get you right?
Exactly. And that's what we are going to talk about next.
That's great. And I think that my takeaway at this point early on is that we have to learn how to be so flexible given the situation, in this case, the pandemic. So it's like we may have to let go of some of the, what we are calling the tried and tested, but now probably not so effective programs, and then embrace what is new. And I look forward to seeing what are the new steps or new methods you introduce to us. And thank you very much. And we look forward to that in the next segment ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you, Jude. And that's for starters. Boy, I can't wait for the rest. And ladies and gentlemen, this ends part one. And join us for part two, where June will continue his talk about leadership development in the new normal. And guys, this is just for starters. This is just the appetizer. Join us in the next episode where we have part two of this wonderful series of leadership development under the new normal in a few days to come. Meantime, I'm Nelson D, and have a wonderful Christmas ahead, and God bless.